media here, so that's very helpful when we silence ourselves. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alexi Nikitas, and on behalf of 5051, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you to the town of Lincolnville, too, for this great venue. This is awesome. So I just want to say first, just your being here says a lot. Shows you care about where this country's headed, and you're choosing to be part of the process, to be present, informed, and engaged. And honestly, there couldn't be a more important time to do that. We're at a real tipping point in America. What we do right now, how we vote, organize, and hold power accountable will shape what kind of future we leave for the next generation. Let's be real, the people we elect have a say in just about every part of our lives. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the quality of our schools, whether we can afford to go to the doctor. Politics isn't some far-off thing we can ignore. Where there are people, there's politics. Too many of the folks in power currently have clearly lost sight of who they actually work for. This is supposed to be a representative democracy. That means us, the people, not super PACs, not billionaires, not corporate lobbyists. But what we see way too often is policies that protect profits instead of people. That's exactly why we're here tonight. As the legendary Shirley Chisholm said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair, which we're all sitting in folding chairs tonight. This forum is about giving you the chance to hear directly from the candidates, no spin, no filters, so by the end of the night, you'll have a better sense of who's ready to challenge business as usual and fight for a government that works for all of us. While you're here to get informed, I want to make sure you're also aware and register to vote. Head to scvotes.gov to double check your voter registration. This year alone in South Carolina, nearly 170,000 voters were marked inactive, often without a warning. I personally know people who I let know about this who checked their voter registration and they were deemed inactive even though they've voted recently. So we all have to check. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends, make sure everybody knows to check their voter registration early. Just a reminder, South Carolina's next big statewide election is in November 2026, which is when these folks will be concerned with. But in the meantime, there are local, county, and special elections happening all the time, and they count too. Real change starts in our neighborhoods, on our school boards, and city councils. So please have a plan to vote in every election, primaries too. There's no such thing as an off year. I just want to begin with some acknowledgments, thanking Sam, the 5051 statewide leadership, and of course Brian Holman with 5051 Somerville for making this event possible. And I quickly want to acknowledge our amazing community organizations that have lended their support to us. And that includes 5051 South Carolina, 5051 Charleston, 5051 Somerville, Charleston Indivisible, Somerville Indivisible, Silence is Not an Option, also known as SINO, Let the Revolution Begin, peacefully of course, the Liberty Party, the Libertarian Party, members of the Labor Party, LCLL, Best Friends of Low Country Transit, 6 Campaigns, and SC Women Forward, which is a Facebook group with 18,000 members strong statewide. All right, so let's get some ground rules out of the way quickly. This is how tonight will go. Each candidate will have 1 minute for opening remarks and 90 seconds for their closing remarks. For each question, they'll have 2 minutes to respond. Our timekeeper will give us a 30-second warning before time is up. And let's dive in. First, let me introduce the candidates. Get my cheat sheet. We've got Ms. Catherine Fleming Bruce, who's part of the Democratic Party. Kyle Freeman, Democratic Party. Christopher Giracello, Democratic Socialists of America. Mr. Brandon Brown, Democratic Party, Dr. Annie Andrews, Democratic Party, and Dr. Casey Whitener, Libertarian. Did I get all that right? We thank you all for being here. As you guys may know, Lindsey Graham's office just didn't answer, and then planned his own town hall this evening, which he then had to cancel because
Thank you.
he got flooded with questions about why he wasn't at this event. So we believe that's why he canceled. Andre Gower couldn't be here. He had just announced his campaign, and then Mr. Lynch did not seem interested in attending. So let's dive right in. Question 1. Oh, I'm sorry. Opening statements. Yes. If you don't mind, we'll start with Ms. Catherine Fleming first. Oh, there's a button on top.
Thank you, Kyle. Okay, hello everyone. I'm Catherine Fleming Bruce from Columbia, South Carolina. I am a long-time dedicated activist. I've had the opportunity to work side by side with many of you in voting rights, women's rights, a number of other issues. I'm also an author. I've had the opportunity to work in historic preservation, in telling our story and making sure that the funding is there and the partnerships are there so that people realize, and one thing I focused on is civil and human rights history. So when we preserve that history, as we did with the Jessica Simpkins House in Columbia, we realized that all of us are part of a continuum of social change. So I'm committed to doing the work as an activist, taking that work to Washington, partnering with folks who are in Congress, working for our state, partnering with those of you who are engaged individually and in organizations for change, and partnering with other elected officials to reverse what's happening right now. That's going to be the directive of the person who gets into this seat. So I thank you for the opportunity to have us all here.
And I just wanted to mention our timekeeper's over here, and she'll hold up a sign that says 30 seconds. We have 30 seconds left.
And then I'll throw up this other white one when your 30 seconds is over. Sorry. Just kidding.
Hello, my name is Kyle Freeman. I'm 35 years old. I'm a father and a husband. And I come from a military family. My grandfather was a 2-star admiral in the Navy. My mother was a lieutenant commander. And I didn't go into the military myself, but I do remember stories that my mother told me about flying senators out to aircraft carriers. And she says absolutely every one of them was rude and mean to her, except for John Glenn, somebody who was in the military himself. So there's lots of reasons that I'm stepping up and I'm running. I'm running on a platform of honesty and integrity, where I've made a pledge to never lie. And I think that I can show by example that we can have a better relationship with the people in our government and the people that represent us. I feel like we should demand more from the people that we trust with a sacred office to do this, and we should be more accessible. A minute isn't a very long time to go into it, but I do hope that you all consider voting for me because I'm planning on overturning Citizens United. I'm planning on boosting labor laws and improving unionization efforts, protecting unions. Oh, am I done? Never mind, I'm done.
My name is Christopher Girosello. I'm born in New Jersey in 1992. I moved down here in 2010. Love it. Never going back up north. Graduated from Coastal 2016. I have a bachelor's in biology. I'm an American first, FDR second, unapologetically pro-democratic candidate. In our day, certain principles and economic policies have become forgotten. We need a second Bill of Rights with a new basis of security and prosperity that can be established for all. Among these rights are the right to earn enough for your family without having to work a second job. The right of every businessman, big or small, in an atmosphere of freedom. Freedom from unfair competition and domination from monopolies at home and abroad. The right of every family to a decent home and the right to Medicare for all and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health.
Good evening. I am Brandon Brown, your candidate for United States Senate, and I'm so happy to be here with these good people who are going to have a dialogue about retiring Lindsey Graham. It is all of these candidates' goal and all of our goal to put the people's voice back in Washington, D.C., to save communities like Lincolnville, who we know is named after President Lincoln, by a man named Reverend Canyon. This area was known as Pump Pond because of the train rail that ran through it and the agriculture that was being shipped onto other regions. So in this evening, I'm excited to talk about my platform and how I'm a fifth-generation South Carolinian, and I understand all the trials and tribulations that we face. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to this forum tonight.
Good evening, I'm Dr. Annie Andrews. I am a mom and a pediatrician, and I've worked in children's hospitals for nearly 20 years, including 15 years at the Children's Hospital here in the Low Country of South Carolina. I love my job as a pediatrician, guarantee it's a better job than being in the U.S. Congress. But when you go to work every day in a children's hospital, you start to understand the impacts of broken policies coming out of Washington, D.C. that are harming our kids and families long before they ever get to the doors of a children's hospital. So I got off the sidelines back in 2021 and I ran for Congress against Nancy Mace. And even though I lost, I didn't go away. I've been fighting every day here in South Carolina for our kids and our families. And I'm in this race to defeat Lindsey Graham, a career corrupt politician who's been in the U.S. Senate for half of my lifetime. I believe in South Carolina and the kids and families I've served here for nearly 20 years, and I'm not afraid of a fight, especially for anyone who's willing to throw our kids and families under the bus. So I'm starting with Lindsey Graham, and I won't stop when I get to the U.S. Senate, and I'm here tonight to ask for your vote and your support. Thank you so much.
Hi everybody, I'm Casey Whitener, and like Catherine, I'm an author. I've got a couple of published novels and a couple of published textbooks. Like Kyle, I refuse to lie, so I will also be telling the truth, even if people don't want to hear it, which sometimes tends to be the case. Like Annie, I'm also a mom and a wife. I'm from Blythewood, South Carolina. I teach at the University of South Carolina, so a little bit like Brandon, I'm interested in history, and I'm also a generational South Carolinian. My grandparents came up in the Florence area and raised their family there. I was a South Carolina native, born here, raised in Northern Virginia, and came down to go to school at Clemson University. I have a PhD in organization and management, and a little bit like Christopher, I don't like monopolies. As a matter of fact, I don't even like duopolies. I'm here to break open the duopoly and to be the candidate that gets into the Senate as a libertarian so that we can disrupt the so-called balance that we have there right now, which you might consider to be a little bit of gridlock. Thank you for having me, 5051.
All right, thank you to all our candidates. I think I forgot to get a thing, what order we're gonna go in, so I'll try to keep track and y'all correct me if I'm wrong. We'll start, if you don't mind, we'll start with you and go down the road. Okay, and it's 2 minutes for every question, same deal, and Hope will let you know when you have a 30-second warning. First question, public education is the foundation of a thriving democracy. What do you see as the biggest threats to public education in South Carolina and across the nation? And what can be done to address those issues?
I think the biggest threat is the refusal to commit to public education. And after that, the refusal to fund public education adequately. Many of y'all are familiar with the long-standing fight to make sure that every child is properly educated. We have not had people in the State House to support that. We have had a federal government that has tried to make sure that there are protections that cover every child's need, that covers the disabled child, that makes sure that we have schools that are going to address, or at least attempt to address, the needs of African American students and others who have been systematically marginalized. Today, we have seen almost a total dismantling of that. We've seen public education, higher education funding, and the opportunity to get loans cut as well. So we are at a point where we're going to have to fight to return that. If we don't, we will have a permanent underclass of people in the United States. And that's one of the things that I think is going to be the biggest challenge, but it should have the biggest support from all of us who have children or who have gone to a public school, and we want to appreciate the fact that if we've had the benefit of a public education, we want to make sure that remains for our children and that it remains strong, especially those of us who had to fight even to access those schools back in the 60s and 70s. So we don't want the door to close on public education and equal access to education. We have to fight to make sure it stays open.
So my wife is a teacher. She teaches high school. She teaches civics and economics, which is incredibly relevant right now. So this is a very close issue to me, and I can tell from personal experience that a lot of it is there's a systemic attack on the Department of Education and on funding our education, and trying to make access to education harder and harder and harder for individuals. In Marlborough County, the number of AP government courses that are offered is actually zero. Zero. There's no way to get college credits in AP government. And that's not just at one school, that's the entire county. The continuous defunding of our education system is leading to actual problems where schools are rotting on the vines, where good teachers that have a huge impact on the lives of their students are leaving to go into other areas. There are people that try to get jobs in the federal government, and there are people that will go and get a new degree so that they can change their careers simply because teachers don't make enough money. Teachers aren't given enough respect. They're given, and they have to buy their own supplies for the classroom, and it's not, they're not helped by the Department of Education at all, and that's before it was under attack by DOGE. So we need to bolster these. We need to remember that we have to invest in our people and invest in our future and invest in the students and the schools, because we need to allow this country to tap into the untapped potential of its citizens. We have geniuses driving dump trucks. We need to give them the opportunity to actually fully reach their full potential and skyrocket us. Elon Musk tapped into just a little bit of that, and he became the richest person in history. And we should use the government to do the same thing.
We need complete education reform, from universal child care to increasing funds for public schools. In Tennessee, if you guys are on social media, they have a Tennessee Holler out there. And they, in Tennessee, are taking all the money. Martha Blackburn, the senator from Tennessee, is taking all the money, putting $7,000 every single public tax dollar. She's going to match that to people who want to take their kids and take them to a private school somewhere else. That's $7,000 out of every single person's pocket in this state. It could be. On top of that, we need to raise the wage for teachers. I believe that we need to triple the federal minimum wage to at least $21 or $22 an hour, and we need to triple the Social Security for our senior citizens. Also, when we do raise the wages for people, there's a lot of people that talk about there's going to be inflation and all that. We can't just pay for the loans to go away and then more people go back to school and the system continues again and again and again. Donald Trump's going to, with his terrible tariffs, he's going to bail out the farmers for $62 billion. That's the amount of student loan debt that people have. $62 billion. If Donald Trump and the corrupt Republicans can bail out the farmers with their crappy tariff that's not going to work, then we can afford to relieve young people of student loan debt. It's funny how they can cancel the Department of Education. They can stop everybody from answering calls, but they can find you and they can garnish your paycheck. I find that pretty entertaining. There's no one there to answer the phone, but they can go reach into your bank account or your kid's bank account or take away your house, because that's what they're going to do next. No American smart enough to go to college, go to become a doctor, to become a professor, should not go to college because it's going to cost $500,000 of debt to go. Thank you.
Thank you. I come from a line of public school teachers. The first thing we got to do is get Lindsey Graham out of office because he's not fighting for public school. Second thing, we need an incentive program that anybody graduating, going into teaching public school, we will on day one remove all of their student loan debt. That's an incentive for teachers to stay. We also need to give huger tax cuts to teachers that take money out of their pockets and buy supplies, particularly in rural areas. Thirdly, we see Donald Trump and his administration holding the money from students from South Carolina for those critical after-school programs that we know that they deserve. We also have to fight vigorously to partner with community organizations to help us provide nutrition for our students and to get those students prepared for the next day. Some of our children in South Carolina, the only meal they get is when they go to public school. And instead of us standing up for those students, what is this president and Lindsey Graham doing? They're cutting the SNAP programs. We can't stand for this as South Carolinians. We know some of the most talented people went through public school, like Ronald McNair, an astronaut. We know that some of the most talented people went through public school in this great state. So the first thing is we have to show compassion to our communities. We have to have a senator that's going to stand up and not just be a sounding board for Donald Trump. And you have a commitment on day one. I will go in and fight for teachers because they put bread on the table and they help establish the middle class. Thank you.
The biggest threat to public education right now is Donald Trump, Linda McMahon, and everybody like Lindsey Graham who is enabling this chaotic administration that puts kids last time and time again. The best thing we can do to fix our public education system in this country is start winning elections as Democrats because we care about our kids. I'm the proud mom of 3 public school children in the Charleston County School District. I am deeply committed to fixing the inequities that are inherent to our school system. I know as a pediatrician and mom that access to a quality public education lays the foundation for every child reaching their fullest and brightest potential. I also understand the hard truth that children don't inherently have political or economic power. It's incumbent on us to build that for them, and if we do that, then we can strengthen America's public education system rather than tearing it down.
The biggest threat to education, public education in this country is apathy. We have systemized the excitement out of learning. It's fun to be in classrooms. It's fun to learn. It's fun to be educated. And education should be liberating. People who get educated should be better citizens. They should be more engaged with their community. They should be excited about the world in front of them. But my students come into my classroom and they can't remember the last time they were glad to be in a classroom. We have apathy in education, and apathy is what drives teachers away. We have funding. The funding is being spent in the wrong places. We should start with those teachers' salaries and work our way back. We should pay competitive rates to the people who are our frontline workers, the ones that bring the fun into the classroom, the ones that bring their creativity and their capabilities, the ones that bring a flair for education. That's what we need in education. I believe education at the state level, at the local level, is the best places for us to be working on these problems. And I think our community can be engaged in that. But I think we have to be honest about the fact that the system is the problem. And us Propping it up is just perpetuating the problem. We have an apathy about education, and we need to be more excited about it and enthusiastic about it, and our teachers want that, but they can't do it alone. They need our help. And we as parents can help them by helping our kids be excited to be at school and helping our kids be responsible. And I don't know, but maybe we could lower the voting age to 16, and then we could really get some excitement in those high school classrooms. Just a thought.
And I think I start with Kyle. Is that fair? Okay. So question 2. I don't know if everybody knows this. South Carolina has the highest eviction rates in the nation. Dorchester County, where we are right now, is among the highest counties in the state. South Carolina's car insurance is one of the highest in the nation. We have the 3rd highest pedestrian fatality rates in the nation. Out-of-pocket expenses for medical care is among the highest in the nation in South Carolina. All of this while wages for working Americans have stagnated and the cost of living skyrockets, driven in part by corporate price gouging and unstable trade policies. As a U.S. Senator, what obligation or ability would you have to help address these issues, which we might argue begins with protecting workers and ensuring fair, livable wages?
Well, as I said earlier in my speech, I want to support the working class because I'm a part of the working class. I was an essential worker during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm very proud of the work that I did then. We were part of the supply chain, and our link never broke, and we're all very proud of that. But we do need a lot more support than what we have. The union busting has gotten so bold and brazen that many people don't know that they're even allowed to start a union. And I was speaking with a 27-year-old not too long ago about a pension and about some of the benefits that should be offered, and he asked, what is a pension? It's gotten bad enough, and the decline has gone on long enough that this new generation doesn't even know the options that they used to have available to them. And so we have to act now because we're running out of time. We have to stop these corporations that buy up all of the housing and raise the housing prices just so that they can turn those houses into rental properties. We have to put a limit on how many of these properties that these people can own. Almost all of these problems come from massive corporations trying to siphon as much money out of the economy and out of the citizenry as they can. And they have the power to influence our elections, which means we need to elect people that won't listen to them and that aren't scared of them, that are willing to fight back on these things, to overturn Citizens United and get their money out of politics. Because it's the influence of these massive corporations that lead to all of these problems. And I still have 30 seconds, but I don't think I have much more to say.
So like I was saying before, we want to triple the federal minimum wage, we want to triple the Social Security payment for people so people aren't living in poverty. 50 years of trickle-up economics has turned the working class into the working poor and millionaires into billionaires, and enough is enough. There's a lot of people in this country that don't pay their fair share. For example, the top tax rate hasn't changed since FDR came into office, or Eisenhower came into office. And when Eisenhower was in office, the top tax rate for somebody making $1 million was 95%, and it hasn't changed, and the tax rate's now 37.5%. That's ridiculous, okay? On top of people like Jeff Bezos going to Venice with $500 million to rent out Venice. Jeff Bezos has $500 million to rent out Venice. He's got $500 million to pay more tax, along with Elon Musk and all their little billionaire friends. That's the first story. Second story is the insurance companies, like he was saying, they're price gouging us. Somebody should take Teddy Roosevelt's Monopoly stick, dust it off, and beat the hell out of these companies until they give us our money back and our fair share. Monopolies are the reason why we are getting price gouged. Monopolies are the reason why your insurance rate went up. My insurance rate went up. My mom's been telling me since I was 18 years old, get out of the 18 to 25, your insurance rate will go down. It did until last year. It's because the billionaires don't care about us. They don't want to pay insurance claims out. And we're the only country in the world, the only first world country that doesn't have Medicare for all, and the only first world country that has more people working in the insurance industry to deny your claim than to give you medical coverage.
That was a very, very good question, and let me speak to a couple of points. First, these tariffs hurt South Carolina. It hurt industry, and it creates an atmosphere where we can't have good paying jobs. So the first thing your United States Senator has to do is to fight to protect South Carolinians and to fight to make sure we have good paying jobs. Secondly, we know that the Department of HUD has been under attack for some time. And the Department of HUD has these block grants to help people that are renting to have home ownership. But we know that regentification is real. Regentification has driven people out of their communities, and we have not been able to keep people in the communities that they used to walk to church with and go grocery shopping with. So we need to be moving in South Carolina to immediately look at home ownership, building over 400 new low affordable houses for people. But we also have to hold people that own rental properties accountable for what they charge their tenants. But we don't, it goes unguarded and unchecked. And in some of our most rural communities, where people are on fixed income because of Medicaid and Social Security, they can't afford these high-paid homes that we see being built. Right around the corner, this new development that you see, those apartments are going to start at $1,500. Now, a lot of folks on fixed income can't afford that. But it all plays in one thing. We have to have a senator who is going to be in Washington, D.C., who's going to be fighting, and then he's going to come to the district, South Carolina, and meet with people, hear what they're saying, not taken for granted, and not hiding in his house in Seneca, South Carolina, and not hiding from us. He needs to be held accountable for not giving South Carolinians a town hall meeting.
I think we need to be talking about affordability every single day. And we think about affordability, we think about the things that you outlined, which include housing costs, which are out of control, and we need federal intervention to create affordable housing in communities all across the state of South Carolina. We need to lower the cost of childcare. We need to talk about the impact of the Trump administration's chaotic tariffs, on and off again tariffs that are impacting South Carolina small businesses, South Carolina farmers, South Carolina workers in the auto industry. And the fact of the matter is there are no adults in the room anymore. Lindsey Graham arguably was an adult 22 years ago when he first got to the US Senate, but he isn't anymore. So there's no one around to enact actual economic policy, and instead we get chaotic political theater that is impacting the lives of South Carolinians. I hope that we have the chance to talk more about healthcare, but healthcare costs impact every single person in this state, and this devastating, quote-unquote, big, beautiful bill is going to raise healthcare prices for everyone. It's going to impact the most vulnerable first, and that includes folks on disability, young children, pregnant women, and people in nursing homes. We are very soon going to see rising premiums for those of us with private insurance, and we're going to see rural hospitals closing their doors. Hospitals are already making decisions about hiring, which means healthcare is going to become more inaccessible and more expensive for those of us who are fortunate enough to maintain health insurance coverage. And the fact of the matter is, I think we all agree we need someone in Washington, D.C. who's actually fighting for South Carolinians. Lindsey Graham doesn't care about any of us in this room. He's not even willing to show his face because he's in Washington, D.C. to serve one man and one man only, and that's Donald Trump. And that leaves behind everyone in this state who is struggling. So we need to send someone to D.C. who's willing to fight for everyday South Carolinians.
So costs right now, comparable to the 1980s, are really not different in the two categories that make a big difference for American households: housing and cars. In fact, the difference between adjusted for inflation and adjusted for income and time and all that, if you look at a podcast called Words and Numbers, they break it down pretty nicely. It's not a difference from a numbers perspective. It's a perception perspective. So the perception that there's not any housing available, there's not any affordable housing available, the question becomes, what do we consider to be affordable, and who do we think should be able to afford housing? How much do they have to earn to be able to pay for housing? And there are people that are making plenty of money to be able to afford a reasonable kind of housing, and that's not the housing they want, or that's not the job that they want. There are opportunities in our society right now that people are not willing to take. So the perspective or the perception that things are terrible is sort of this story that's been told to us over and over and over again, that we're believing that everything is awful. And the fact of the matter is, it's really not any different than it's ever been. It's been the same conditions over and over and over again. And these are the conditions that you get when government gets involved. We need to reduce the regulations that force these higher prices. We need to make it affordable for businesses to build housing that they can then sell for a reasonable price. We need to get rid of the tariffs that are costing us a lot of money. Obviously, that's a challenge for South Carolina. We're a huge recipient of foreign direct investment. We don't want these tariffs. They're not good for us. And our senators need to be standing up against Donald Trump about that particular issue right now.
That's a lovely thing to dovetail on. The idea that we need to let businesses do whatever, and they will do the right thing on their own. I think one of the major points that we're looking at right now is the question, what is the role of the federal government in these issues? What is the role? What is the role that they should play in providing assistance, providing a public safety net, making sure that there's an opportunity for people to have care, access to education, a safe place to live, an affordable place to live. That's really our central question right now. So we need to send not only an individual senator, because once we get rid of Lindsey Graham, we still have Tim Scott there. So we're going to make sure that we work to change the Senate majority. We need a Senate majority, and we need a House majority. So part of what I pledge to do in order to make sure there's enough people in the Senate to move the agendas forward that we need to move, is that we will work in partnership with those other states that are trying to help become the Senate majority. Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, some others. South Carolina, we cannot drop our responsibility to help change the numbers in the U.S. Senate. So first we make sure that we agree and that we talk to our voters to say, we want to make sure that the federal government's role is understood as a support, as a partner, as an enforcer of justice, and enforcer of equity. So I believe that as a senator, that's what I will act on, and I'll make sure I have partners in crime to make sure that gets done.
All right, next question, we'll start with Chris. So many of our South Carolina citizens identify as socially conservative. As we all know, South Carolina tends to lean red in statewide elections. How will you show them that your values align with those who identify as social conservatives? What messages will you emphasize to connect with those voters who don't believe their values align with progressive positions? Like basically, how will you reach people who are not your normal following? How will you speak to them and make them, and have them realize that you have things in common, your values are in common, their values are in common, more progressive ideals.
Well, I think we should start with looking at our past. I mean, FDR was so popular, he won 4 elections, and the Republicans passed the 22nd Amendment because they were scared. And maybe we should go back to policies like that, like raising the minimum wage. If you raise the minimum wage, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. All that matters is you're barely keeping your head above water. You young people who are just getting by can't save for the future. People who, boomers, when in the 70s, you could go and you could work a summer job and you could pay for college. You could go and you could work a summer job and you could put a down payment on a house. What type of summer job do you know that you can work, that you can put a down payment on a house now? There isn't one. That's the point. Income inequality is because the rich people keep hiding their money. And then we have a $37 trillion deficit. We don't have a $37 trillion deficit because we can't afford to build houses, because we can't afford to pay for meals, because we can't afford to do these things. We have a $37 trillion deficit because we cannot satisfy the rich, the gluttony and the greed of the rich people. And they need to be taught a lesson. And there needs to be new tax policies. In this country, every single person should have the opportunity to succeed. It doesn't matter what race you are, what religion you are, what zip code you're from. You should have the opportunity, if you are smart enough, to be able to pull yourself and your family out of poverty.
As a 5th generation South Carolinian, I grew up in a community where we were taught to love thy neighbor, to have compassion about our communities. Currently, we have 2 senators that serve not a purpose, but they serve power. They don't serve South Carolinians that are going through everyday life with all the struggles. So when we talk about conservatism and people saying that they're conservative, we have to call people out. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. But we can build a concentration camp and talk about alligators chasing people and killing people if they escape. But we can't build a homeless shelter for the homeless. They suck. They stick dogs on African Americans during the Civil Rights era. This is the same mess going on in Florida. And you call yourself a Christian. People are here trying to get jobs to better themselves. We can bus people to a jail, but we can't bus somebody to a hospital. And you call yourself a Christian. It starts with us stepping up and being on that line of fighting like Pastor Dixon. Being on that line calling people out when they purge over 800 votes in South Carolina to stop people from voting. We need a senator who is going to stand up and say, no, if you're a real Christian, then follow the God that I'm following and do the thing that's right. And that's protecting citizens, helping them get food, housing, and the ability to take care of their seniors.
I think this question boils down to probably the most important question, which is how do we start winning elections? To fight for all the things that I think probably everybody in this room agrees on. And that's the issue of electability. And to be successful in a campaign in a state like South Carolina, you have to do several things. You have to meet people where they are. And when you go there, you have to listen first. 90% of this job is listening, just like my job as a pediatrician in a children's hospital. It's never been about red or blue. I walk into a room of a sick or injured child with a worried parent who I've never met before. I immediately have to build trust with them, interact with the child, come up with a medical diagnosis and treatment plan, communicate that effectively to these worried parents. and model that for the learners that are with me. That is incredibly complex, but that is exactly what we have to do on the campaign trail. We have to show up where people are, and we have to listen first, come up with solutions together, and then enact those solutions, and we have the privilege to be elected. A lot of people like to use the word progressive as an insult, including Lindsey Graham's spokesperson when she is asked about me. That I have a radical progressive agenda that is out of touch with people in South Carolina. I'd like to, first of all, I define progressive as someone who thinks things can get better. And as Catherine talked about, an activist is someone who's willing to roll up their sleeves and actually do something about it. So I wear those labels as a badge of honor. What is so radical about believing children shouldn't go to bed hungry? What is so radical about believing that every child deserves access to a quality education and quality accessible health care? What is so radical about believing that gun violence shouldn't be the leading cause of death in South Carolina? So we need people who are willing to listen. We need people who know how to embrace new media, social media, to meet voters where they are and then solve their problems when we have the privilege to be elected.
I want to break out the two words here because you said social conservatives. How do you show them that you align with them? On the social conservative side, we have an uphill battle out of this room because we have a supermajority who likes to use the government to inflict its will upon the rest of us, specifically as far as women's rights are concerned. So that's an uphill battle. How do you talk to those social conservatives about not using the government to inflict their values on everybody else? The second piece of this is what is an existential threat to our country, which is the national debt. And the debt that we bear and the debt that we're passing down to the generations that come after us, that is a problem. It's a huge problem. And I will say conservatives seem to care about that. The people in Congress don't care about that. They're continuing to spend because they'll all be dead by the time the bill comes due anyway. But most conservatives, if you look at our young people who consider themselves conservatives, they care about this debt. So that's the way to connect with them, is to talk about how we're going to reduce the amount of wasteful spending that we're seeing. We're going to take a 5% cut out of every department in the federal government. There's 5%, you can give it up. You can give up 5% in your household. 5% of my household every month is $300. We can give up $300 a month, we'll just kill the streaming services. Every budget can be reduced by enough percentage to make a difference. And that's the way you connect with conservatives. They want to see us reduce those wasteful expenses. That's not everything, it's the wasteful stuff. And there's plenty of room for it in a bloated federal government like ours. Also, just as a note on the FDR stuff, he's also responsible for locking up a bunch of Japanese Americans. So let's just keep that in mind as we're holding that title up there.
I'd like to focus on all the voters and all the non-voters. One thing that we talked about recently was that we have close to 1 million people who are not voting at all. So we talk about social conservatives, and these are the people that we have to be concerned about. I said we want to be concerned about every voter, and we want to be concerned about every non-voter. And non-voters are people who have given up on the electoral process. The non-voters are people like the man that I encountered in my community in Sumter, where I grew up. And his little neighborhood street was Swiss cheese full of potholes. And I asked him, sir, I said, who is your elected official? Who's your city councilman? And he told me the name. I said, well, you really need to talk to them to make sure they come fix the street. And he looked at me, he said, they're not gonna do nothing. This is what we're fighting against in terms of politics, in terms of people seeing us not just as somebody to bring goodies and whatnot, but as a partner in addressing the issues of the community. So we must be partners with people who believe that every South Carolina person is worthy of investment and engagement. That means women, it means immigrants, migrants, refugees, asylum seekers. It means LGBTQ people. It means folks who don't participate and we don't see them at the country clubs, or, we might drive past them coming here, sitting outside because they have no place to go. The disabled. So all of these people are folks that I feel need to be part of our agenda.
So I have spent a lot of time talking with conservatives about these kinds of issues, and I've found that most conservatives are more interested in answers to problems, to solutions. And I operate on the concept that the best idea wins. Doesn't matter if it's my idea or yours. If it's better, that's the one we should go with. And conservatives respond really well to that. I've also noticed, and I'm sure everybody in here has seen something similar, that if you explain the idea and why it works, conservatives tend to be on board. But if you use the buzzwords, they tend to hate it. And we've all seen videos of somebody saying, what do you think of Obamacare? And they go, oh, Obamacare is the worst thing that's ever happened to this country. They say, what do you think of the ACA? Oh, the ACA is great. My health care is through the ACA. It's fantastic. Fox News and the propaganda machine has booby-trapped certain buzzwords that make it easier to communicate with people. Just don't use those buzzwords. If you go and you talk to a conservative and you say, I want to bring nuclear power facilities here to South Carolina to bring high-paying, high-quality jobs while lowering the price of utilities, every single conservative in the room will be on board. But if you call it the Green New Deal, they'll think that you're trying to pitch them a scam. It's all about how, if you actually let them engage with the ideas and with the plan itself, they'll be on board. And I know that this works because the job that I work at is filled with Republicans and filled with conservatives. But nobody that works with me specifically is still a Republican. I've convinced all of them because we have good ideas. And as long as we're willing to listen to, as Annie said, to listen to the other side and to actually engage with their ideas and see which idea is better, we'll both be on the same team, finally. And that's how we come together, that's how we heal this, and that's how we win the conservative vote.
All right, thank you. We're going to take a little break and do a rapid fire question. So this is just a yes or no. And I'll start down here with Dr. Casey, if you don't mind. If elected, will you take APAC money? Yes or no?
No.
Dr. Andrews?
No.
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 I want to follow that question up with this one, and you'll be first. What is your position on the U.S. role in promoting a lasting peace between Israel and Palestine?
First, we are, and our country is committed to the protection of the citizens of Israel. But I believe in diplomacy, and I believe that we have to have a real agenda. We don't just give Prime Minister Netanyahu just a blanket to do whatever he wants. We're killing thousands of kids, and people are hungry, they need medicine. We have to be engaged. And whether we accept it or not, language means something. Hateful language creates more problems. And I think that what we've seen in this administration is just giving and empowering this Prime Minister the ability to say what he wants. To not even offer an olive branch and a pathway forward. So we need foreign policy that speaks to all people, not just one group of people. But the problem that lies with it is Lindsey Graham is just a rubber stamp. He doesn't offer an opinion. He doesn't make a suggestion. All he says is, I'm proud of the president. No concern for human life. No concern where our dollars go. And just no concern for the overall well-being of that particular area in the world. So we have to stand up for people when they don't have a voice for themselves.
I'll start by saying that, in my view, Lindsey Graham is a warmonger, and I am not. The terrorist attack on October 7th was horrific, and America needs to do everything in their power with other world leaders to ensure Hamas does not have the ability to enact terror like that again. I also believe Israel has a right to defend itself. But as a mother and a pediatrician and a human being with a heart and empathy, the images and the headlines that are coming out of Gaza every day are heartbreaking and morally distressing on a scale that I don't think I have ever experienced. It's time for America to lean into our values and lead, to do whatever we can to expedite finding an end to this violence and a peaceful solution that respects the dignity of Israelis and Palestinians.
You're with me until lean in. I'm there. I agree. I think Israel has a right to exist and a right to defend itself. And I do think that the attacks deserved a response, and Hamas is a terrible terrorist organization that should be eradicated. But I don't think the United States has a role to play here. I think our obsession with the Middle East is two-part. First, it's about oil, and second, it's about a weird kind of presidential obsession with getting some kind of peace in the Middle East as if it will be a lasting legacy. And if you go back multiple presidencies, you'll see this preoccupation with the Middle East. And it doesn't get any better, and it doesn't change. And what ends up happening instead is the U.S. ends up with a black eye every time. I think we should do what we can to support unilateral efforts to bring peace wherever we can, but I think for the most part, the United States needs to stay out of it. I think we have been too deep in that region for too long, and we just don't need to be there anymore.
I think it's a little too late for the U.S. to be out of what's going on in Gaza. We are a main funder of what's going on. And as a matter of fact, we can't just talk about the current administration and what's being done in Gaza. We have to look back at other administrations, including one run by Democrats, that continue to sign off on bombs and all kinds of equipment being sent in service of what's happening there. So we are a powerful nation, the most powerful nation in the world. We have the opportunity, although that opportunity now is being dismantled. Our State Department is being dismantled. I think they fired like 1,500 people. And that kind of institutional knowledge of those communities, of those nations, of the leaders there, of what's happening. So we're going to be going in blind, trying to negotiate a peace. But we have to be committed to peaceful engagement around the world, and that includes Sudan, that includes Ukraine, it includes so many other places. And we need leadership that also talks to people on the ground to make sure that we are all partners in providing a peaceful way forward, because the more bombs you drop, the more enemies you create. And so we can't continue in this current vein. So we have the opportunity now to make sure that we stand up for what is just, and that we also make sure that when we speak against what's happening, that that's not misunderstood as being anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic. We want to make sure that that is understood, that criticism of a nation is not the same as criticism of a people.
I'm really glad you brought that last point up, because that's something I wanted to focus on. Israel does have a right to defend itself, but a criticism of Netanyahu is not a criticism of the people of Israel, especially when the majority of the people of Israel no longer want to be led by Netanyahu, and the people of Gaza don't want to be led by the people of Hamas. They got into power through lies. I'm on the side of the people, and it's a shame to me that if you say that we should spare the lives of the people in Gaza, you're supporting terrorism. If you say that Netanyahu should calm it down, you're called an anti-Semite. And this sort of vitriol, this binary black and white viewing of this conflict, leads to just this endless cycle of suffering for the people there. It's like an Ouroboros of tragedy. If America is going to be involved in this conflict, I think we should do it in a way that has a humanitarian pursuit, where we're on the side of the people and on the side of prolonging life and prolonging peace. If America can have this much influence on Israel, we should be leveraging that influence in order to end these conflicts and bring about peace. If we're able to provide them with that much weaponry, then we should be able to use that as significant leverage in order to change this. And there's a group, there's an activist group in Israel and Palestine that's made up of Israelis and Palestinians that are dedicated to having a peace in that area. And the leader of that was in an interview, and he said something that absolutely haunts me. And I can never shake it whenever this conversation comes up. He says, the people here, we are either going to share this land or we will share the ground beneath it. And he's absolutely right. And we should make absolutely certain that peace comes to that area by them sharing the land, because there's already been enough death.
I also want to say we want to make sure that we don't have an expansion in the Middle East conflict, which is being threatened right now.
Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza, period, full stop. They're using our money, $3.8 billion a year we give them, and they can have subsidized health care, and they can have everyone go to college. But because somebody is on the Epstein files, we have no leverage all of a sudden. Isn't that funny? I think it's pretty funny, quite honestly. We all know Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad spy. We all know the tapes got sent back to Israel. So let's do some simple math here. Donald Trump on tape touching young women. Donald Trump giving Israel billions of dollars. And bombs. We're already involved. Those are our bombs, and that's our tax dollars. Okay? We are responsible for that genocide, and that is part of the reason why Kamala Harris lost. Because she didn't want to go out there and go against Joe Biden and say it is a genocide and what's going on is wrong. Donald Trump can go to Ukraine and say, I'm going to pause the Patriot missiles, I'm going to pause the money, I'm going to pause this, and I'm going to turn it around, flip it around, and make it a loan. Well, I can do the same thing to Israel. I can pause the money, and I can make it a loan, and I can make them pay every single dollar back that we gave them. Oh. And Bibi should be in The Hague, being hung up by the gallows. And his little best friend over there too, because they're both over there. The ICC, the International Criminal Court of The Hague, wants them. You know, the United States is the only country that doesn't apply by the ICC. It's because we like to go and bomb everyone for shits and giggles. Okay? Enough. Enough with this. If we want to be the leader of the world, we need to play by the same rules as everybody else. And we need to stand by Ukraine with the Budapest Memorandum that we signed in 1994. And we need to, and I want, last thing, I will continue what JFK did, and I'm going to take the nukes away from Ukraine as well.
All right. The next question. We hear endless debate about border security, but rarely see clear definitions or measurable goals. At the same time, millions of immigrant laborers contribute to our economy without any path to citizenship. What is your vision for a just and secure immigration system? And I just want to add, the gubernatorial candidates so far have expressed that they are open to a facility for ICE in South Carolina, similar to Florida. And I would love to hear your thoughts on what, if you are elected, what you will do to help us stop that. But going back to the, immigration reform, what are your ideas and so forth? Dr. Andrews.
To get that divisive rhetoric out of our daily mainstream South Carolina political life, we have to start winning elections, because if they can say we need an alligator Alcatraz in South Carolina and still win an election, then we're not doing our job to protect South Carolinians. On border security and immigration, to be a secure nation, we need a secure border, and we need to enforce the laws as currently written. As someone who is outside of the political world for a very long time, I personally am sick and tired of seeing both parties use immigration policy as a political football every time it's election season, but then no one can ever get the job done. We need comprehensive immigration reform, but we need immigration reform that respects the dignity and civil rights of every person who is already here, just trying to make a better life for themselves and their families. We need to expand paths to citizenship so that citizenship is accessible for folks who are trying to contribute to our economy and are contributing to our economy. What we are seeing from Kristi Noem leading the Department of Homeland Security, a point voted yes on by Lindsey Graham, is horrific and deeply un-American. We cannot have ICE agents who are masked in plain clothes, ripping people off of the sidewalks and throwing them in vans. This is the top of a very slippery slope, I am afraid. And to stop it, we have to win elections. And when we win elections, we have to deliver on the promise of comprehensive immigration reform that respects the dignity of everyone that's here in South Carolina.
While we just met, I have a lot of confidence in the folks at this table and the people in this room to deliver comprehensive immigration reform, but I have zero confidence in the ability of either the Democrats or the Republicans to do that. As Dr. Andrews noted, they use it as a political football. They have no incentive to solve this problem, because if they do, they can't campaign on it, and they certainly can't raise money on it, which is what they've been doing through the ICE raids. I don't know how many of you got texts from Gavin Newsom about how you could give some money to help California, but if you got it, that's because they're fundraising on it. They're using this issue to raise money because they are corporations that sell our government. That's what they do, these two parties. My vision for a just and secure immigration system is a decentralized immigration system where individuals who come into our country and want to have a path to citizenship begin with a 1-year guest pass. They register, they tell us who they are, they keep themselves clean, they get a job, they pay taxes, and after a year they come back and we give them 3 years. And after 3 years they come back and we say, hey, you've done a great job for 4 years, let's put you on a path to citizenship. It's an introduction to what it's like to be an American citizen and the opportunity to become legitimized. We're going to have a lot of people who won't make that 1-year mark without having done something wrong, and that's when they're going to have to go. When people come to this country, they need to be law-abiding citizens, and I think with a process that we're to walk them through citizenship or head them towards being registered workers, we'd be able to keep an eye on them, we'd be able to keep an idea of whether or not they are doing what they need to do to become legitimate, productive members of our society. But unregistered, we just have no idea.
I don't know how many of you follow United Farm Workers, but if you do, you follow them on social media. One thing they do is to produce a lot of content that helps people understand how vital their work is, how much experience they have in making sure that we have food on our tables. So I do not want to see their civil rights stripped away. I do not want to see an attitude where they do not have access to due process, where people don't think they have any rights at all. Most of these folks are taxpayers. They're producing and they're putting into the system. And one of our American slogans is no taxes without representation. So everyone who's paying taxes should be a part of our decision-making system. We want to be sure, I think, to have good relationships between nations, to make sure that we can have agreements that help protect our borders, that help make sure that there's opportunity in every country. We can do that with our agreements that we have. But those who choose to come here should be seeing what democracy is like. They should be experiencing democracy and being a part of that, and that we see one another as equals. I would also like to see us resume our refugee, asylum seekers, and other agencies that help people who are whose lives are at risk in other countries. We want to make sure that we do that as well. So we want to have, the way I see it, we want to have an idea that people who come here make America what it is. Some of us were here not of our will because of slavery, and some of us were here by choice, but all of us make a unique nation that we ought to be maximizing the strengths of.
I do agree with Dr. Andrews that immigration's been used as a political football and that there isn't much concern with actually solving the problem. But we do need to solve this problem. The immigration system needs a complete overhaul, a total reform. It's completely unfair that somebody who is a law-abiding citizen that follows all of the rules can go through the process and lose his attempt at a citizenship simply because his employer can no longer afford to keep him employed. This is unconscionable that somebody's entire livelihood and where they live and all the people they know are riding on the whim of a third party that isn't interested in whether or not this person stays around. So we need a complete overhaul. And that overhaul has been proposed and pitched several times, and it's been fought back against because of exactly what they said. They want to run on it, they want to keep it as an issue, they like that it's broken. So we need to start electing people that actually care about the citizenry and care about humanity, because the United States is better than this. We're better than people in cages. We're better than concentration camps. And to talk about the alligator Alcatraz being brought to South Carolina, I would say the only benefit of having it in South Carolina is it's a shorter drive to burn it down, because we don't want it, and it shouldn't be here. It's absolutely unconscionable, and it's ridiculous that we're even having a conversation. But we do need to move on past this, and we need to start fixing the immigration because it's the foundation of the country. Thank you.
Every single person in this room, unless they're Native American, is the child of an immigrant at some point in time. They came over from Europe, from South America, from Africa, from Asia, from wherever, and we all became American. According to Stephen Miller's own policies, Donald Trump's not even American. His mother immigrated here in 1940 from Scotland, lied on her immigration papers, and then became a citizen in 1942. Does that make Donald Trump an illegal immigrant? Does that make Donald Trump's children, that he married all these, whatever, Eastern Slavic people? Melania getting a Genius Award while posing nude. I didn't know that was a genius thing to do. But when you have people that aren't even citizens, and then Donald Trump says, we got to get rid of these anchor babies. Your children are anchor babies. And if that's the way he wants to play, since we don't have the majority here, Alligator Auschwitz can stay up until 2029, and then we can throw President Trump in there, along with Lindsey Graham and all the other Nazis that are breaking people's rights. Okay? Because in the 14th Amendment, it says person, not citizen. Person. The immigration system is broken. And the way to fix it is very simple. You have people that have been living in this country for 10, 15, 20 years. They have a job, they have a house, they have a kid, they have family. Those people should be American, period, full stop. Now, the whole immigration system, it needs to be looked at, whether it's a 5-year system, a green card system, a 1-2 strike system. We need to reform immigration, and we need to make it easier for people to immigrate here legally, non-violently, and legally.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's just get to the point. It's not illegal to be an immigrant if you're wealthy. Elon Musk immigrated to the United States. And we don't talk about deporting him from a country that, by the way, I can't use the metaphor that Donald Trump described it as, but he said the country in continental Africa were But yet, the First Lady of the United States is an immigrant. Didn't have a challenge. Made her parents naturalized citizens. We are attacking children being born here. Breaking families up. And what does Lindsey Graham say? Nothing. What does Tim Scott say? Nothing. Tim Scott say, I love you, Donald. I mean, this is a joke. And we don't call them out on it. We have to get tough. People are hungry. And they walk thousands of miles to get to this dream called America. And instead of extending an olive branch like a Christian, we shut the door. We punish them. But we want to go to Mexican restaurants and eat their cuisine. I don't see many Canadian restaurants opening up in America. But we have to be serious because we're the smartest country in the world. We're the most powerful country in the world. And if we can't come up with a solution as Americans, then nobody can. And we have to call people out like Lindsey Graham. And the only way we're going to change these policies is that we got to bury his political career in November. Thank you.
All right, we're going to do a quick rapid fire question. This is a yes or no. And we'll start down here with Ms. Catherine Fleming Bruce. The question is, do you support the right of workers to form and join unions? Yes or no?
Yes.
Absolutely.
110%.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, so long as they're not coerced and forced to be members of that union simply because of their profession.
I think that's a no, right?
They have, I support their right to form unions.
So no.
I just don't want them to be coerced into joining the union.
Sounds like a Lindsey Graham answer.
It's cool, FDR, I got you.
That's cool. Donald Trump doesn't need a war to lock the citizens in concentration camps, does he? Yeah, pretty quiet now, huh?
It was rapid fire and now it's over.
All right. Moving on.
I see.
Moving on. And I think, are we at Dr. Leitner? Okay. So, despite Jamie Harrison raising record-breaking money in 2020 and narrowing the gap, he still lost by 10 points. What do you plan to do differently, operationally, rhetorically, to avoid the same fate? What sets you apart from the other candidates that should make voters coalesce around your candidacy as the best one suited to beat Lindsey Graham in November of 2026?
Well, as I said before, I think that the problem with our government currently is that it has been co-opted by the two major parties. I believe that the parties are corporations that are selling our government to the highest bidder. Anybody who will donate can have a seat at the table. So I think that there's not a chance really to beat Republicans in this state unless we decide that we're going to give up on both the parties. I understand that's an unpopular opinion in this room. I get it. I recognize that people have put a lot of time and effort into the Democratic Party, but I'm going to be honest with you about this. I think the only way to disrupt this is to send an independent, somebody who doesn't have to play by their rules. When people get elected by these major parties and they get into office, their first job is to fundraise, to pay the party back for the amount of money that the party spent on that election. That's their job. They don't even go into Capitol Hill the first day. They get sent somewhere on K Street to make fundraising phone calls. These corporations are vicious, and they're going to put a lot of money into this, but they're not going to let whoever gets elected off the hook. That person's going to have to do whatever the major party wants them to do. So as much as we have ambition to do amazing, wonderful things, unless you're independent, you can't. And they're going to tell me an independent can't win in South Carolina. So my goal is to get 1 million people in this state to say we've had enough, and we're going to vote for somebody that is not beholden to the two-party system. And that's my goal. I'm going to spend time from now till next year talking to every South Carolinian I can get in front of and say to them, something's not working. And the only way to truly upset the balance in the Senate is to send somebody who doesn't have to play by those two parties' rules.
I think the thing that I think is critical, right, in winning this race is for people to understand what's at stake and for us to organize in a different way. I think we're going to have to look at how we decide who's a credible, viable candidate, what we want that person to be able to do when we send them into the snake pit of DC. What skill sets do we want them to have when they go there? So I think we're going to have to talk about that. We're going to have to talk about holding people accountable, which we really don't have a framework for doing that in South Carolina. Most of the time we don't criticize any of anybody in our own party. We don't criticize anyone in our own party. We criticize the other party. But everyone has to be held accountable. So we have to make sure that we understand that we're in a movement space right now. We have to understand that we will have to act now, not just when we become elected, because there are things that are happening now that we have to stop. So the other thing that we can look at with some hope is that we can look at the New York race and see what's happening in that New York City mayor's race, and to say that even though we have the two-party system there, we have someone who's bringing an independent thinking spirit and speaking to the people about their needs, and people are responding to that. So we have the opportunity as candidates to speak to the needs of the people and say, this is what we're going to do, and there's not going to be any limits on that except what we choose to do together.
So, I've been working very hard to try to build a sort of a campaign that involves people from up and down the ballot, a statewide campaign, so that voters can say, like, I'll enact this in the federal level in order to support your local city council while they achieve this, and you should vote for a representative, so we can give them a complete package that's actually been worked on. And I've been speaking with several different candidates that have been running. And it just reminds me that a blue wave isn't something that happens, it's something that we do. And it's something that we take part in, it's something that we make happen. And people are fed up with the federal Democrats. They've been woefully inadequate so far. Chuck Schumer's ridiculous, strongly worded letter didn't do anything. His response to the big beautiful bill was to change the title. It's absurd, it's ridiculous, and it's not good enough. And we need people that are outside of that establishment, that aren't beholden to these big donors, that aren't beholden to the Democrats that have been in this system, that have said, no, this is the way that it goes. We need people that can say, no, that's not what I was voted for. That's not what the people voted me in for. It's not to follow in line. It's to represent their interests. And if we continue to elect people that are willing to do that, we will outnumber them. Like, they don't have complete control over you, regardless of how the party structure works. And John McCain proved that with his famous downvote when he destroyed the Trump's attempt to get rid of the ACA. And so you can stand up to the party. And we need people that are willing to do that. And we need people that are willing to sacrifice a political career to do it. And in my opinion, if I have to trade my seat in the Senate to give the entire country free healthcare, fair trade. Let's go. I'll go home and play video games.
Right now, everybody under 40 in the country, voters 40 to 18, outnumber people over 40 in the country. So our time is now. already. I'm not for sale. I'm not going to take any money from the Democrats or Act Blue or Jamie Harrison or Citizens United if it's strings attached. You want to give me money, you want to donate to me, you donate to me because you believe I'm going to win. Not beholden to anybody. And I would vote to get rid of Chuck Schumer in the Senate because I think he's that incompetent, okay? Because he doesn't do anything. All he cares about is to make sure he has his house on the hill. Doesn't care about us. He has Medicare for all. All the people in Congress have Medicare for all. They're going to have money. They can insider trade. They can do whatever they want. But we don't get anything. It's a big club, and we're not in it. No more. It's time for us to get representation. It's time for us to be in the club. And it's time for us to blow the doors wide open with all the corruption and the nonsense. We have enough money in this country to do everything, to take care of every single person in this country.
Let me begin by actually answering the moderator's question. I've known Jamie for a long time, more than 10 years. He's a great guy. He didn't know that a thing called COVID was going to take over our country and shut the country down during an election process. He couldn't predict that, but I didn't hear him talk about putting Clorox in his veins either, like somebody in D.C. But look, the Democratic Party has used the same strategy over and over. Hire strategists from outside South Carolina to come in and tell us good Southern folks what we need to do. Buy $70 million worth of TV advertising. Buy radio advertising. But these outsiders that don't know South Carolina politics don't go into communities where people are and talk to common day people. I've announced almost 14 days ago and already been to 20 different counties in the community, in the churches, because I know my people. And that's what we have to do. We have to organize, but we must, and most importantly, we have to inspire people to want to go to the polls. We have to teach people. This is a teachable moment. You're not voting just for yourself as a young adult, but you're voting for your grandmother so she can have her health care, so she can get her insulin. We have to think about it from a different terminology. We have to know that there are people out there that have no nutrition that affects their quality of life, so they can't be properly prepared during school for instruction. We have to get to the people, not just on social media, but going to the community. That's South Carolina politics, and that's what this campaign is going to be about. Thank you.
And the question is, how is 2026 different than 2020 and how can we win? Brandon's point about COVID is apt. Democrats didn't knock doors in 2020. You can't win a statewide election in South Carolina without knocking on doors. We don't have that handicap this election season. 2026 is also a midterm election. 2020 was a presidential election and Lindsey Graham had Donald Trump on the ballot to bail him out. Lindsey Graham has never been more vulnerable than he is now because he's never been more unpopular than he is now. His approval rating in the state is 34%, 10 points lower than Donald Trump's. We have an opportunity in 2026 to knock out this career corrupt politician. It is a midterm election. This is our only chance to beat him. I agree with Brandon. We have to build a team, a campaign that can win and knows how to win in South Carolina, and that's why I'm proud of the team that I've built that is South Carolina based. I'm also proud to have the endorsement of my friend Jamie Harrison, who did run a strong campaign in 2020, but the odds were stacked against him. There's a lot of lessons we can learn from that race, and there's a lot of lessons we can learn from what did happen in New York City. The lesson I took away from that election result is we need candidates who talk to real people, like real people, meet people where they are, and offer solutions. And where people are includes two things. It includes getting to every corner of the state, but it includes being very active on social media because that is where people are. We have to do both, and we can do both. And then I think to the point, any implication that someone who's running as a member of a particular political party is therefore beholden to those people when they get elected is not true. And anybody who thinks that's how I will govern is underestimating how stubborn I am and how forthright I am and how driven I am, but by my own moral compass and what I know to be in the best interest of South Carolina's kids and families.
All right, I think we're doing well on time, so I'm gonna keep going if y'all don't mind. So after that last exchange, I'd like to know, how do you plan to address intra-party tensions between progressives, moderates, and black voices and present a unified vision? Which one of your core messages has the broadest appeal and to moderate and conservative voters? And how can you ensure it isn't dismissed as too partisan or ideological against Graham? I know that's a complex, full question, but I'd love to hear what you guys have in mind for that. And I think we're back at Ms. Catherine.
Well, one thing I find interesting is that we have a new DNC chair. And we also have maybe 5 or 6 Democrats who are doing tours. Bernie and AOC, we've had several come here in their pre-presidential maybe visits. And I don't think we've come into a unified piece yet from what happened in 2024. We're just not quite there yet. And it kind of remains to be seen who the strong leaders will be that will bring the Democratic Party to that, and if that will happen. So all who wear the label are gonna have to be part of that effort. And they're also gonna have to make sure that we do have all the voices at the table, the progressive voices, the moderate as well. So that's going to have to happen. Will the leadership let it happen? I don't know. That remains to be seen as well. But each Democratic candidate here on this stage has the opportunity, and each Democratic candidate who's not on the stage, who's running for governor, who's running for other positions, has the opportunity to engage people and bring them in. Because the Democratic Party is only as good as all of us working together.
I feel like this echoes a previous answer that I gave, in which the message that seems to resonate most is one of problem solving. People are feeling the hurt right now. It doesn't matter what party you're in. The tariffs are hurting people. The policies are hurting people. It's scary to watch people get abducted off the streets. People are hurting, and people want solutions. And they don't want these pitches, these platitudes, and political buzzwords. They want somebody that can come in and actually solve problems. And in my mind, that's what progressive means. It means solving the problems that we have so that we can move forward. And as long as you focus on that and stop focusing on what party came up with it, you can get people to join you. One of the issues that I feel like we have is so much of our messaging is run through focus groups, and they're focused on buzzwords and tweetability and shareability and all of this, and it's run through this machine that just sucks the soul out of it. And as Democrats, we're the party of empathy. One of the most the highest determining factor of whether or not you're a liberal or a conservative is how empathetic you are. And as the more empathetic party, we have this message that just sounds like politics distilled. It just is this soulless, wad of information. So when Jamie Harrison lost, I don't think he lost because he was a bad candidate or a bad person or people in South Carolina didn't like him. I don't think they voted against Jamie Harrison. I think they voted against the same thing they voted against every other time. We need somebody who's willing to come out there and just be honest about what they think and be willing to say, I don't know, if they don't know, or be willing to ask questions in order to learn more. When people come over to me and say that they're concerned about something and I'm unfamiliar with it, I say, tell me what you think about it. Let me learn from you, and I'll go do my own research after that. We need a candidate that's willing to actually come to the correct answer and not just the popular one.
When you're poor, or you can't afford food, or you don't have a roof over your head, it doesn't matter what policy it is that gives you that meal, that gives you that roof over your head, that gives you that empathy. When you tax rich people, it doesn't matter if they're red or they're blue or they're independents. They need to pay their fair share. And that goes to the government, and then the government takes care of people. Are they red people? Are they blue people? It doesn't matter. They're people of Charleston County. They're people of Dorchester County. They're people of any county in this state. We need to triple the federal minimum wage. That's not a red or a blue policy. You don't go to an employer and say, hey, are you a Democrat or a Republican? No, you go to an employer and say, how much money are you willing to pay me? That's what you do. And if you have things that are Medicare for all, for example, then you don't have to stick with that employer. And if you do have a trade union, you can negotiate for more. Because now the trade union doesn't need to negotiate for health care through the private boss, the job. They can negotiate for higher wages. We're the only country in the world that doesn't have guaranteed time off. You should have 10 days off. We should have 10 days paid vacation every single year. When a woman gives birth to a baby, she should have 1 month, 2 months of maternity leave. We need stuff that makes sense. Common sense gun reform. When I was in high school in New Jersey, they taught you a class, and then you took the little paper you got, and you went to go take your student driving test. Why can't we teach a gun safety class in school? Why can't we hire veterans and have veterans who are homeless or they're down on their luck be employed by the federal government and teach people, red or blue, gun safety?
We are a people of value. We are a people that lead. Democrats set the example. I pray for all these candidates for offering themselves. And instead of us tearing each other down, we should be lifting each other up. Because it's hard to run for office. It's hard to be out there on that highway giving up yourself. We have to set the example of saying to people, if we're going to reach out to our neighbor, we're going to bring us together. Because at the end of the day, it's all of our responsibility to send Lindsey Graham home. That is our primary focus. And I'm so focused on doing that. I would never disrespect somebody for political gain. That's not how you do it. I probably disrespected Lindsey when I asked him to release the file and protect our children. But he doesn't want to address that, though. That's one thing. But, ladies and gentlemen, if we're going to start winning back elections, we got to show the South Carolinians that vote that we're compassionate and concerned and committed to their issues. Limestone University in Gaffney, South Carolina, over a $40 million economic impact, needed about $7 million to keep the doors open. Neither one of our senators said nothing. Imagine the reach in Washington, D.C. that they could have went and got to help higher education. They did nothing. When Donald Trump again attacked Lindsey Graham's best friend, John McCain, Lindsey Graham said nothing. And if he wouldn't stand up to Donald Trump about his brother, then he won't stand up for South Carolinians. And my commitment is to bringing us together, but my pledge is whoever the nominee is, to get behind and fight to send Lindsey Graham home.
So to address intra-party conflict, I echo a lot of what has been said. As Democrats in South Carolina, we have to get our shit together. We can't spend the next 9 months tearing each other down because we have a national villain to beat in November 2026. I worked really hard to try to help Kamala Harris and Tim Walz get elected. And I was devastated, as I'm sure many of you were, with the results of that election. But the answer isn't to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think that's the saying. As a pediatrician, I recommend don't throw babies anywhere, frankly. The answer is to rebuild, to learn hard lessons, and to move forward. I never once considered not running as a Democrat because I'm a proud Democrat, because Democrats are the ones fighting to restore women's bodily autonomy. Democrats are the ones who are fighting for an expanded and permanent child tax credit to lift millions of children out of poverty. Democrats are the ones that are going to fight to rebuild our children's health care system that has now been gutted by this big, beautiful bill. Democrats are the ones who will go toe-to-toe with the NRA to pass common sense gun laws to address the leading cause of death for children in this country. Democrats are the ones who will fight to protect Medicare and Social Security, who will fight to raise the minimum wage. I am a proud Democrat, and my goal by running in this election is to help rebuild the brand of our party, to bring us pride and optimism and hope. Because if they can do it in North Carolina, and if they can do it in Georgia, and if Andy Beshear can be the governor of Kentucky, we can win statewide in South Carolina. We just have to believe that we can do it.
I don't think this question is for me, so I'm going to answer it in a particular way. I would love for South Carolina to think of South Carolina first. I would love for us to think about our communities, to think about one another as brothers and sisters. My grandfather, when he served in World War II, he said that as the guys were on the different transports and being sent all over the world, one of them would say something like, "You from South Carolina? Whereabouts?" The other one said, "MacB." Be like, from Marion. And they'd act like they were brothers. Because if you're from South Carolina, that's kin, right? Everybody from 96 to, Walhalla, all of us are kin. And I think that that's the goal here, is to bring South Carolinians together and say we want something different, we want something better. And we know that what we've been working with has been subpar. And whatever that better is in your view and in your version, go for it. But stay involved, stay engaged, go knocking on doors and convince your neighbors for something better than what we've had. We've been treated like dummies, and we've been taken advantage of. We are a foregone red state. They don't even bother to talk to us anymore, other than to say they just assume we're going to go red. And that should infuriate everybody, that there are people out there in the machine who think they know your hearts and minds without ever having been in South Carolina. That out-of-state money, that out-of-state influence, those out-of-state machines, they don't know South Carolina. So please, South Carolina Democrats, whoever you get behind, please be about your state, be about your communities. And if you choose to vote outside of the duopoly, I'd be glad to be a coalition builder with you and to work with you on the things that are important to you and important to our state.
If everybody can deal with it, I have one more question, because we're a little ahead of schedule. Many South Carolinians struggle to access timely and affordable health care, especially in rural communities where hospitals have closed and providers are scarce and getting more scarce. What concrete steps would you take to strengthen our healthcare system and ensure that no one in South Carolina has to go without necessary care because of where they live or what they earn?
Well, I would focus on the veterans first, because they put their lives on the lines and their bodies on the lines for us, and we should make sure that their lives and bodies are taken care of. That's only fair. And I think that they should be able to go to either the VA or any hospital and just walk in and go in for any reason. And Uncle Sam will figure out the bill afterwards, and we'll take care of them because they deserve it. And once we figure out how to do that, let's just expand that to include everybody.
Medicare for all. I mean, I'm beating a dead horse right now. But if we have a single payer system, like they have in all over Europe, and like how we pay for in Israel, then no one has to go without health care. Like him, he cut his finger, remember? Cut his finger, didn't go to the hospital. Why? Because you don't want to pay the bill. And he's fine, right? But that's the point. That's the point. Now let's say his finger got infected, and then he has to go to the hospital a week later, he might lose his finger. Health care is a human right in this country. It should be a human right, and it needs to be a human right. That's it. There's nothing else that needs to be said. We have enough money. We need to do Medicare for all. People are going to dance around the issue over here. I'm the only one that's going to tell you I am going to vote for Medicare for all, and there's no lobby that's going to tell me what to think. I don't need a think tank. I'm not going to hire someone to tell me how to think. I know how to think. That's why I'm up here.
This is the toughest issue, I believe, of the night. My family, over the last 50 years, and my dad, who was a teacher, worked beside his brother, who worked within our family funeral home. A few weeks ago, a 40-year-old woman with 2 children died because she didn't have access to get her insulin and suffered. And no one, where the pharmaceuticals companies are concerned, are ready to drive down the prices. They want to keep the profit margins. And that's what this terrible big bill is going to continue to do. They talked about repealing Obamacare. And they talked about making the cuts. They talked about cutting preventive measures, exercise, pre-screening, and the things that we know that are important in our community. People are hurting. And that's why we need a United States Senator who's not going to say, oh, by the way, we're going to send our money to New York and New Jersey, but we're not going to take it in for South Carolinians. We're going to see some of our rural hospitals close because of this bill. We can't continue to deny that it's all about big business and not about people. You need a United States Senator from day one that is going to be advocating for South Carolina, working for South Carolinians. And we don't need a nice person, but you need a tough person that's going to tell Donald Trump he's wrong. And it's going to stand up to Donald Trump because he's created all this chaos. And now it's time for us to vote him out. But first it's going to start with voting Lindsey Graham out. Thank you.
So I've worked in the healthcare system since 2002, so nearly 25 years. And let me just be clear that in America today, we have a profit-centered healthcare system, not a patient-centered healthcare system. I feel that as a patient, I feel that as a daughter of patients, a mother of patients, and as a physician. The profits in healthcare are going to pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies. I can't not tell you the number of hours in a day I spent dealing with those two industries just to meet the needs of my patients. This can and will be the lead issue in the 2026 election, so we need someone who understands this issue. The big, beautiful bill, Medicaid cuts, are devastating. This is a coordinated attack on our nation's healthcare system, and you cannot take that much money out of a system and expect it to continue to function. I'm sure most people in this room understand that this doesn't just impact people who are on the Medicaid program. This will impact every single one of us, because when you take health insurance away from that many South Carolinians, they can't access primary care. They get sick, they get injured, they can't go to the doctor, so they stay home until they're sicker, and then they go to the only place where they will be able to access care, and that is our emergency departments, because they are legally obligated to provide care. They will receive care in the emergency department or get admitted to the hospital, and the hospital will have to find a way to pay for that care. So they're going to raise the insurance premiums for those of us with private insurance. Hospitals are already making hiring decisions because of the passage of this bill. Hospitals are going to hire fewer nurses, fewer doctors. We're going to have overcrowded emergency departments. Hospitals are going to shut down service lines, close facilities in rural communities. We have 5 rural hospitals that are at risk of closing. This is the issue of this election cycle, and we need someone who knows how to talk about it.
We're all invested in the profit margins of the healthcare industry. Through our 401ks, through our retirement plans, through Wall Street, we're all invested in the profit margins. So when the health insurance companies perform, and when they do the things that they do, when the hospitals perform and do the things that they do, it has an effect on our portfolios, on our stock portfolios, on all of our retirements. So this is a complicated issue. To Dr. Andrews' point, there's a lot of moving parts in it. And the problem with previous healthcare solutions is they've tried to simplify them into a 7-word soundbite for people to understand. As a senator, you have the power of investigation, and you can bring people to the table and try to find a solution that would work for everybody. There's not any one major culprit here other than our government. The government is the problem with healthcare. They set prices, they manipulate markets, they complicate everything. And if you think the government healthcare works for veterans, because Brandon brought up the veterans, or you think that Medicaid or Medicare for all and government-run healthcare is a solution, I would ask a veteran about the quality of their care and the access that they have to care and how long they have to wait to receive care. The market is completely messed up, but it's messed up because it's another one of those issues that solving it would make a lot of people have a hard time running on that issue. So it's a challenge that we need to take on as a community, and we need everybody to bring their best ideas to the table, but we definitely need to think about creating a solution that is not about the corporate interests of the current ruling parties, but is instead about the patients who deserve patient-driven healthcare.
As some of you know, I do historic preservation, and one of the buildings that I'm working with is the Dr. Cyril O'Span Medical Office in Columbia. And he was a black doctor and surgeon who traveled the state before segregation to offer his services. So went to a number of the black hospitals, or the hospitals that were set up to serve black patients during the segregated era, to provide those services. So that was in 1961, and he continued to partner with other black surgeons and physicians over a period of time. So in this building, black physicians worked from 1961 till 1990 some odd. The last people in the building was a doctor who set up a nonprofit to try to address some of the access issues for low-income people. And I asked him how he ended up choosing this building. And he said that this was a building in downtown Columbia that had the highest percentage of people who didn't have access to care. Okay, so this is downtown Columbia, where people can walk to the hospital. You know, several hospitals that you could actually walk to, but it was still one of the sickest places here. So I think that we will have to, and one of the things that I will do is make sure that we have funding that pays for Medicaid and Medicare, that we repeal the big beautiful bill when we get in there with the Senate majority and House majority, that until that time we use legal means to obstruct the bill from being implemented, you know, and look at ways that we can do that to put a drag on closing the hospitals and closing these other places. We have to have access to care. We know that the federal government provides a great deal of that money. So what we're going to do is stop the bill through legal means and repeal the bill in 2027.
I believe we're ready for closing remarks now, so I will start at this end, if that's okay, with Dr. Casey Whitener. Oh, I'm sorry, in 90 seconds, and Hope will give us a 30-second warning.
So my name is Casey Whitener, and I am an educator at the University of South Carolina. I teach strategic management and entrepreneurship. So my experience is on the business side, recognizing the interconnectivity between things like trade policy and corporations and building businesses here in South Carolina. We have a number of South Carolinians that are business owners. We have a great small business community and a great entrepreneurship community here in the state that I've been fortunate enough to be part of. I mentioned I'm also a writer. I'm a member of the South Carolina Writers Association. I've had the opportunity to lead that organization for several years as the president. I've also been the chair for the South Carolina Libertarian Party. I kind of laughed about the inter-party challenges because if you know anything about the Libertarian Party, it's like herding cats in the Libertarian Party. So it's definitely a little challenging to pull those folks together inside our party. I decided to run for Senate because I went to an event held by Planned Parenthood on the day after the Women's March up in DC in 2017. And I went to the Women's March with a gigantic sign that said, "Because love." And on Sunday, during that Planned Parenthood opportunity, there was a group there called She Should Run. And they said, "What's the thing you care the most about? And who takes care of that? That's where you should run." The thing I care the most about is our national debt. It is an existential threat. It is not okay. And they're spending like drunken sailors, and they continue to spend. We spend and spend and spend, and they're kicking the can down the street for our kids and our grandkids. Our country will collapse under the debt. That's why I'm running for Senate.
So I'm Dr. Annie Andrews. I'm a mom and a pediatrician who served this community for nearly 20 years. I never, ever, ever planned to pivot into politics, but I'm a problem solver. And when I saw the problems that my patients were facing in hospital room to hospital room, I knew I needed to look upstream for problem solvers. And it won't surprise anyone in this room to understand that there aren't enough people fighting for kids and families in Columbia, and there aren't enough people fighting for kids and families in Washington, D.C. So I decided to get off the sidelines. And I haven't stopped since then. And regardless of the outcome of this election, I promise you I won't stop, because I'm in this for South Carolina. I'm not in it for myself or my own political agenda. I think it's important for you to know that I support term limits. I plan to serve 2 terms in the U.S. Senate and then go back to the job of being a pediatrician. I also support a ban on members of Congress trading stocks, and I won't take any corporate PAC money. What you see when you see me is who I am. No one is pulling the puppet strings. I am not beholden to anyone. I'm deeply passionate about building the South Carolina that I know each of us deserves, and most importantly, I'm deeply passionate about building the future that every child, all 73 million children in this country, so desperately need and deserve. There has never been a more urgent time for us to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone and show up in a fight in a way that we haven't before. So thank you all so much for being here tonight. And again, I want to ask for your vote, and I want to ask for your support. And I promise you, I will fight like hell, and I will not let you down.
Again, my name's Brandon Brown. I'm your candidate for the United States Senate. I think about this town, and I think about the gentleman on the wall right here. He was joined by 6 others as they formulated this town, coming out of Charleston in pursuit of a better life, and in pursuit of a place that they could work hard, build a family, and worship. The same thing that immigrants are doing across the South, coming for seeking a better opportunity. The people that farm our lands, the people that build our houses, and the people that are here to try to provide for their children. We know the challenges that we all face together. But we see the harsh words, the total challenge of a person taking down the things that we need, diversity and inclusion. We just don't want to be looked at, but we want to sit at the table and have an opportunity. I am here because I'm passionate about South Carolinians and getting the resources in our communities that we need so we can feed our children, take care of our elders, and build the pursuit of happiness. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank these candidates. And I'm going to ask you three things. I'm going to ask you for your prayers. I'm going to ask you for your vote. But I'm going to ask you to help me bury Lindsey Graham's political career. Thank you.
My name is Christopher Durasala, and I run because it's now unmistakably clear that we can change these disastrous, divisive policies only by changing the men who are making them. We are a nation of doers and dreamers, inventors and innovators, immigrants and refugees, not billionaires and Nazis. I will own the cons, and I'm going to start with the King Khan himself. And I will lock him up, including any election rigging billionaires. The only minorities poisoning the blood of our country are the billionaire minorities. They are the enemy within. And I'd rather die for democracy than live under fascism. Our founding fathers would have arrested this traitor on January 7th. Why haven't we? That's all I have to say. And free Luigi. Free Luigi.
Free Luigi!
My name is Kyle Freeman, and I want to take a little tangent here and say, I feel like for the first time since I've been keeping track of politics, we're not stuck choosing between the lesser of two evils. And all across the state, we have really good candidates, people that are rising up and getting involved for the first time because enough is enough. It's gone too far. And it finally feels like we have really awesome people that are running. You've had a great opportunity to see them today. And a quote that I always carry with me is, the job of making this world resemble one in which we want to live is a lunch pail job, where day in and day out, hardworking, dedicated people pound on closed doors and grind away until they get a result. And I want you to know that being here, and you that are watching it at home, this is part of that grind. This is part of that process. I want to thank you for being involved in that, but I also want to remind you, it's day in and day out. So I hope you stay involved. I hope you continue to learn more. You get involved in the campaigns. You find out how you can affect that future. Because a blue wave isn't something that happens. It's something we do. And we should do it together. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for hosting. And please give it up for her. She's been standing this entire time, which is amazing. And thank you to all the organizations involved. It's been an absolute pleasure. And here, I'll pass it to Catherine.
Well, on the closing note, I'm Catherine Fleming Bruce. I consider myself the people's candidate because I have been working as an activist in local, state, and regional politics for probably more than 20 years. I've worked in international affairs, gone to UN events. I've been the foreperson for a state grand jury public corruption investigation that got rid of about 7 or 8 legislators who are crooked, and also identified some corporations that were doing stuff under the table. So I'm not afraid to do that. I'm also asking you to do this with me. We need leadership, but we need partnership. We need people working together at the federal level, at the state level, at the county level. We need activists and organizations working together to make sure that we get this done. So I'm asking you to vote for me during the primary, Catherine Fleming Bruce. Check out my website, catherineflemingbruce.com. And we have an opportunity now, but it's more than an opportunity because we're looking at the end of democracy and the end of the social safety net if we don't make the right organizing choice. So I thank you all for putting this together. Thank you for all my fellow candidates over here. Y'all were great, and thank you for the host. But especially thank you because you're going to take the word out to let people know that they have to get involved this year. Thank you.
Stephen. Sorry to disturb everyone. I'm Brian, 5051.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Before we do cut this, before we do this, we're from South Carolina, right?
Yes.
Well, one of our kin has been assaulted recently by national media. I think y'all know who I'm talking about. It's Mr. Stephen Colbert with his show being canceled. 5051 is 100% supportive of free media. In fact, that's why we're creating our own right now. So can we just ask for 1 minute that everybody in the room who supports Stephen Colbert stand for a minute with Stephen Colbert so that we can show him the great state of South Carolina loves him.
I just want to say thank you for everyone for being here. It means a lot. Thank you just for the candidates who showed up tonight. That means a lot. And I want to leave you with a quote by writer and activist Alison Walker. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. So don't give up your power. Use it, talk to your neighbors, make a plan to vote, and keep showing up. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, 5051. Thank you, Lincolnville. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Let's do that.
I know you mentioned getting this. How much did it cost?
So
Cell phone. Is that about getting a cell phone? Do you have wireless mics?